So this is checkpoint 2 for your portrait value study. So the point of this, we're trying to match the values. So I'm going to start shading my drawing half to try to match it to these. The only thing I'm not going to include are these dots here because that was an accident for my printer. So I'm going to omit that. But everything else, I'm going to try to match the value. And you see how dark the background is? His shirt pretty much blends into that background. So it's going to be a lot of shading on my part. Alright, so I'm going to start with this area up here. And I'm just going to start giving it some shading. And his head, I think, actually goes out further, like out here. But because it was a darker shade when I was tracing, I didn't notice that that was actually his head. I only saw the lighter part. And I'm erasing that harsh line because it's going to be a smooth transition from the darker into the lighter shade. Okay. I'm going to leave the background for last because if I don't, it's going to get really smudgy on my paper, and I do not want that. Okay. You can use your finger, you can actually get a Q-tip. Q-tips work great, then you don't wind up with like the lead on your finger. But you can, to smudge the different areas. Depending on the pencil that you use or even the paper that you're drawing on, it might be more or less resistant to the smudging. Looking at the shapes that the shading creates, if you look here, you can see his cheekbone stays a little bit lighter. It's darker underneath. So I'm going to kind of get an idea of where that goes to. Okay, so that I give myself that line. I'm kind of using the side of my pencil too. That's so that it's not getting like a dark point, but more just kind of shading lightly with the side of it. It makes it easier to smudge that type of shading. Now I know you think that this is really light, but this is actually, this area of his face isn't that, it's not this light at least. So I'm still going to have a lot more shading to do in this area too. So even in here, there's going to be shading. So it's a lot of going back and forth. Okay, so I might shade in the dark areas first, like this is definitely a dark area right here. I may shade in the darker areas first, but then I'm going to go back, shade in some of the lighter areas to the darkness that they need to be, or the value that they need to be. And then, obviously, then I'm going to have to go back and shade the dark areas again so that I get them back up to that darker value. And it's just kind of a lot of going back and forth. Okay, and so this shading in here is going to need to get darker. Okay. Notice underneath his lip there's a shadow. So I want to make sure I get that as well. I'm going to turn this to the side for a second because I'm going to kind of lift up this so that I can get some of my shading underneath, because I don't want there to be that white line where there's no shading. So okay. He has facial hair that's on top of this, but I'm just trying to get the underlying skin tone first. He has a little bit of wrinkling right here. See, it's not even close. If you look at the difference between this and this has got to get a lot darker. And this part's almost like you're drawing in every hair. Needs to come down lower. So right about here. I'm going to continue this video in 1 minute.